Next, let's move into some enhancements and additions we've made in the drawing production and annotation area. The first one I want to talk about was added in 22R1. This is the ability to put a coordinate grid on your file. So whether you need the grid lines going horizontally and vertically, and or annotations of X and Y or north and east coordinates on there, we've given you a new tool to do that. So you'll find the tool in the Site tab in the ribbon menu called Coordinate Grid. At the top of the dialog here are some settings of what do you want to see displayed, the horizontal and vertical lines, and what element templates control how that's going to look. Define how many rows and columns that you want to create, the spacing between them, the prefixes and suffixes that you want on the coordinate labels themselves, and how you want those coordinates labeled. Then we can go tell it where we want to place that at, and it'll generate a grid of that in our file. So in this case, I'm getting both the lines, which are very visible and easy to see here, and if I zoom in on it, you can see it's also annotating those coordinates as per the element templates that I set up when I ran the command. In 22R1, we have added a new text favorite to let you label the superelevation at any curve, so the Emax essentially at your curves. This was difficult to do before. In fact, it was a manual process you had to go in and do before. The annotation groups wouldn't automatically pick that up. So here's an existing annotation that I've got. You can see the curve information's on there, or tangent length and radius and PI station, etc. If we go in and we look at that definition for that curve label, it's using this text favorite called My Curve Label. So let's go over and edit that annotation group. So if we took a look at that annotation group, there's the definition for all the parts that were there. All that's been existing for quite some time. What we added in 10.11 is a new field type that'll grab that superelevation Emax. So I'm going to drill down into my linear plan annotations. I'm going to just search on my super to find that. So here is that text field that I want to add. I can specify the accuracy, the prefix, and the suffix that I want on it, to format it the way I want it, and we'll add that or accept that to add it to our text favorite and save it. Once we've got that saved, I'll go back and re-annotate my geometry. When I annotate the geometry, it's now going to look at that curve. It's going to reach through to the superelevation definitions, sections that are on there, and it's going to read that E that's coming off of there. So in this case, that curve happened to have a 4% superelevation on it. But just to show you that this is live and does work across references, I'm going to go over to my file that's got the super definitions in it. Let's recompute the super. We'll change this to a little higher speed and a little higher maximum super. Let that recompute. We see the colors of the superelevation change. It's definitely recomputed some things there. Let's go back to the original file that we were in where we had our annotations. See, that was automatically reprocessed just by opening the file, and it's now up to date. Another annotation addition that we created, or a new text favorite that we created in 22R1, is the ability to label the horizontal length of something on a cross section. Now the problem here was some users were saying that we want to, our requirement, our standards are to label distances on our cross sections with 2 or even 3 decimal places. And when you do that, the slope distance, the true distance of it, may start actually showing some decimal or some numbers within those decimal places. So for example here, if you look at the red text, those are labeling the slope length. That's what you've been able to label before. And when you get to a 36-foot width at a 2% slope, that starts rounding beyond just 36 feet wide. It's 36.01. But they want to label just the true projected horizontal length of that And so it shows 36.00. And that's what this new text favorite's for. So you now have a choice. You can either label the slope length or you can label the horizontal projected length. A setting that we've also added in 22R1, something that many people have been asking for quite a while, so this will help you a lot, is the ability to label your station ranges on the sheets. Prior to this, you had to go back and do that kind of manually if you wanted to put that on there, whether we're talking cross-section sheets or whether we're talking plan sheets. So we've added some new text favorites that allow you to do that. So how would you set this up? Well, let's go in and create the text favorite so we can put these new text fields on there. So I'm going to first look at this from a cross-section sheet perspective. So we're going to go in and we're going to add some new text fields here. They're going to come out of the cross-section annotation area. I'm just going to search on sheet to go find those, and you can see these new text fields. What I want to use is my sheet minimum station and my maximum station. So we'll put those onto our text favorite here. Put the minimum station, format it the way I want it to look, and add that to my favorite. We'll put a dash in there and then STA and our maximum station that we want to put on here. So very easy to set up the text favorite. You just simply go in and pick those fields, put them in the formatting that you want it in. And then I'm going to go put this text into my sheet definition DGN library. I'm going to place that just using my place text tools and go and place that text favorite. Now, before I go and run those and process those cross sections, let's do the same thing for the plan sheets. So it's the exact same process, but we're going to show you that we can put some different information in there as well. So we'll do the same thing again. I'm going to go in and create a new text favorite. Once we've got that favorite created, we'll add those text fields to it. Now these are going to come out of our civil area annotation. This is linear plan view annotation, is where I want to pull these from. And I've got those same options under here. Well, what I'm going to do a little bit this time is I want to also include the alignment name on my label. So let's put the alignment name in first. Select our proper text style so it looks good. And then under that alignment name, we'll put in our station range. So we'll do the same kind of thing we did on our cross sections, our minimum station, format it, and our maximum station. So now that we've got that saved, let's go take a look at using these. Sorry, got to put it on my sheet first. Forgot about that. So let's go place this text favorite, just using the place text tool, and we'll put it on our sheet. And notice that we've got the alignment name as well as the station range on our plan sheets. So now let's go back to our file where we're going to cut these at. I've already got some name boundaries laid out here. I'm just going to go in and process those name boundaries and create the sheets from them. I don't have to do anything special because this is all defined as part of my DGN library where I'm creating this. So it's going to build this as I create the sheets. So here's the resulting sheets in here. And you can see in that title block down there, it's showing my station range, and that station range matches the cross sections that are on this sheet. If I browsed over and looked at a different sheet, we'd again see that this sheet has stations at, or cross sections at 27, 28, 29, and 30. So it's brought those in. Plan view works very similar, very easy. There's nothing you have to do really once you've got it set up in your DGN library. Simply go in and cut your plan sheets. We'll do that here with the existing name boundaries that we have. As it reads in each of those name boundaries, it is going to find the geometry it's based off of, and it's going to find the station ranges that come into play there. So if we zoom in here, you can see this began at station 14 on our match line, ended at 28, and that is the exact same that it's reporting on the sheet border. We introduced a new tool in 10.10, the civil labeler. In 10.11, we've advanced that tool and we took it out of tech preview and kind of finished it up. And part of what we did to finish it up is we moved the definitions for those civil labels into the DGN file instead of being in a separate XML file like they were before. Now, there's a number of advantages of why we did that. Number one, it allows you to load labels from multiple definition files at once. You're not restricted to just one XML. You can have definitions in multiple different DGN libraries. It also makes it very easy to move labels between DGN libraries. It makes it very portable to share your files with other users and makes it easy to manipulate and move labels around. So all of this is managed from inside of the Explorer. You've got right-click capabilities in there to create new categories or folders or new labels, manage those labels, and there's a choice in there to import. So if you have already defined some civil labels in 1010 that are in an XML file, you don't lose all of that. You can simply import those in. It'll bring that data into the DGN library or DGN file you're in. You can add some additional settings in there because there are some new capabilities, and you preserve everything that you've had before. Now, what are some of those new settings that we put in there? Well, we took some of that feedback that we got during the tech preview period, and we listened to you and made some adjustments here. So the first thing is, when we set out to build this tool, it was very much standards based. That's what everybody said they wanted, is a tool where we can define the standards, and that label is going to look like that every time we use it. Once we put it out there, we got feedback that said, well, standards are great, but sometimes we want to override our own standards. We don't want to have to go create a new label. So the first thing we've done is we've given you that ability. You now have some dimension style overrides and text style overrides that you can put in here to temporarily, just for placing one or two dimensions, override what's used there and make them look different. We've also added some new functionality in some new border frames. We gave a new stretched hexagon frame, which takes up less white space in there. And we've given you more anchor point locations for the leaders. You can connect to the points in the corners now, in addition to the left, right, top, and bottom. And there's some new lock perpendicular functionality that gives you more capability there in what you're tying to. So we've heard you that your plans production standards are important and you needed more flexibility in that tool, and that's what we aimed to provide there. Something else that we did with the civil labeler was we added a new function in there to be able to annotate between 2 points in a cross section. So not 2 points on the same element, but 2 separate points within a cross section. So let's take a look at this here. We'll zoom in on this gore area. This is a section right as a ramp is kind of pulling off the roadway. And we can go in now and label between any 2 points and read slopes and elevations and label that information in there. So first I'm going to go in and label some slopes in here. So we'll use this, and this is using this new excess 2 points method, which is a type of method that you can define these labels with. So here, for example, we're labeling just some points in here, and it's picking up those slopes. Now, these points that I'm labeling the slopes all happen to be adjacent points, but they wouldn't have to be. You could also label non-adjacent points or points that are not on the same element. To look at that, let's label the length between 2 points. So I'm going to go all the way here from the left side to the right side here and put this label in. Now this label is showing both the point names that I'm labeling as well as the distance between there. And again, they don't have to be part of the same element. They don't have to be next to each other. Any 2 points can now be labeled. Next, I want to move into something that's coming in the upcoming release, in the 2023 release. And this has to do with understanding where data is coming from when you create your sheet files. It's really kind of difficult in the current releases to understand what's going on. And I think the best way to look at this is to actually look at an example. So this first example I'm going to run is what it would look like in 22R3, or really any previous version. I've got a default model that's got my data in it, and I've got a couple of different plan sheets in here. So if I go look at sheet 1, or let's back to our default model here, I've got data in there, and I can see in my save views that my save views are reading out of this default model. So we've shown you that before. Okay, that makes sense. So what do I have though? Where is it reading out of that default model? I could have, or I do have 8 views in that model, and they could be set up different. So for example, view 1 has my terrain and my construction elements on. View 2's got some background mapping turned on. And view 7 there has no construction elements. My name boundaries aren't being shown. So I've got 3 different scenarios in 3 views. What is it using? Well, by default and by definition, the civil tools always use view 1. So we could tell you that. You may not be aware of it before, but at least we can tell you that. So let's take a look at this. So I got view 1. I'm in my default model. Let's go make some changes. I'm going to turn off my construction elements, and let's turn off the display of my terrain. And now let's go over to my sheet model, and I don't see construction elements. I don't see terrain. So everything's making sense so far. It's behaving kind of like I would expect it to behave, or exactly like I would expect it. But now let's just do something. I'm working on my file here. I don't know. I want to see my 3D model on this for something that I'm working through. So let's go ahead and turn on my 3D model just because I want to look at it. So there I've got my 3D model in here. And notice that it does create a new, what's called a view group. It creates this multi-model view group because I've got multi-models displayed now, my plan and my 3D. Now notice in my plan view, I still have the terrain and the construction elements turned off. That's what I've got in here. Let's go ahead and turn those back on. So there's my construction elements back on. Now let's go over to my sheet model, and I don't see my construction elements. Now a few minutes ago, it was behaving like I would expect, but now it's not. But I went to my default model. Well, what's actually happening? There's a bug, there's a problem in the software here where it doesn't continue to look at that original model. It's actually looking now at the last view group that was created, which is the multi-model view. And it's not looking at default anymore. Well, that's quite confusing, number one. So if I go over here and I look at my multi-model view and I turn constructions on here, and I went back to my sheet model, now you can see they're turned on. So you can make it work in the existing versions, but you got to kind of understand what is the last view group created, what's controlling now, and there's not a really easy way, or there's really no way to know which one that is. We don't give you much feedback for that. So let's take a look at what we've done for 2023. Let's go through the same scenario, just running in different software. So I've got the same thing in my sheet model. I can see my terrain, I can see my name boundaries. But what's really different is if you go look at the save views, in addition to showing the model, we now show you the view group that's controlling that, as well as the view index within that view group that's controlling it. So I can see it's the default group and it's view 1. I don't have to learn that from somewhere magical. We show that to you, number 1, within the software now. The other thing that we've done is we have fixed the problem with it not maintaining the view group that it was to. So when I went to the managed model group and that changing, we have fixed that problem. So if it's based on default, it's going to remain based on default. It's not going to switch over just because I happen to go in here and display my 3D like we did before. Remember, this is where it kind of lost its tie-in because this multi-model view group was created. Now, if we go look at our save view settings, you can see it is still based on the default view group. Number 1, we're showing that to you, and number 2, it is being based on that. So if I went, we can see no terrain, no name boundaries displayed here, no construction elements. If I go back to my default group, turn on my construction elements, turn on my terrain again here, and we'll go back to our sheet, and that default group is still controlling it. So it's not changing where the control source was like it was in previous releases. So you can look forward to that coming in the 2023 release, more visibility in the saved views, as well as more consistency in how it's behaving and that bug being fixed. The next item that I want to cover is also something new coming in 2023. And this is a new capability to create a full last boundary on your profile drawings. So you may want that ability to have that full grid on your profile drawing instead of it cutting off at just the edge of the geometry. So let's first take a look at how this works in the existing software. So what we're going to do maybe if I can get that one to go. All right, I may not be able to show you that one. Something happened to my video here. Apologize for that, but it doesn't want to play that one. But what I was going to show you, if I could get it to go over here, let me just try to stop sharing that real quick and reshare that slide and see if that'll heal. And this is our very last slide today. Of course, Murphy's Law kicks in on the very, very last slide of the day. All right, here we go. So let's take a look at what it does currently. And that would be if I went in and I created a name boundary here within my profile space. So we create this at a particular scale. Let's go lay in some name boundaries along this profile, but I'm going to leave the full last boundary option disabled. So we'll create these boundaries. It creates one full sheet, and then it's creating a partial sheet here out to the edge of our geometry. If we go in and we create the sheets on that now, that will generate a sheet, but it'll create a full sheet, but the grid and the annotations will only extend to the end of that name boundary area there. So we have all this kind of partial sheet here, and we've got a lot of white space on the rest of the sheet. What the new capability allows you to do, if we go back and we run that again, jump up to here, and let's go back here, and let's go in and create some new name boundaries again. Same thing, but this time I'm going to enable this last full boundary option. We'll create those same sheets, but notice when I create this second name boundary, it doesn't stop at the edge of the geometry anymore. It creates a name boundary that's a full size. It's the same size as any other sheet. So when I go through and I create the actual sheet here, that will be created, and I will have that full boundary grid across our sheets. So that's the other new thing that you could be looking forward to in our 2023 release. As Derek said, that's upcoming yet here in Q3, so watch for that coming out shortly.